Welcome to Guns, Guns, Gear, and Guns with Gary Gunderson. I am Gary Gunderson, and this is part two of a collaboration with the Blind Sniper, 8mm Mauser Man, and Great Northwest Weaponry. This is, of course, my response to their choices for favorite rifle owned and not owned, favorite practical rifle owned and not owned, favorite pistol owned and not owned, and favorite practical pistol owned, and you guessed it, not owned. I'm going to go through each type of pick across the channels since there are some similarities that pop up here and there. For the category of favorite rifle, we have a Mosin Nagant by the Blind Sniper, an M44 Mosin by 8mm Mauser Man, and a 1915 made Gewehr 98 from Great Northwest Weaponry, from that beautiful, not that I'm jealous at all, gun room. The Mosin Nagant 9130 from the Blind Sniper and the M44 Carbine are obviously similar choices. Mosins are often derided in the firearms community as garbage rods or moist nuggets, partially because they have been inexpensive for so long, but also because they can have sticky bolts and are generally not the smoothest of bolt actions. But there is a lot of history behind Mosins. They were made in the millions and actually do have a lot of variety and collectability if you know where to look, where you can find some interesting variants and markings. This example was made at the Tula Arsenal in 1938, but was later captured by Finland. I think these are probably favorites for a lot more shooters than you would think given the number of memes about them, either as a first rifle or one that was shot often from cheap spam cans full of ammo. The Gewehr 98 is also a fine rifle. I have a version that was made in 1918 and then sent to Turkey, which I honestly haven't gotten a chance to take out and shoot yet, much to my chagrin. His example was from 1915, and obviously that's a great piece of history and a very fine rifle. You see the long vizier sights there, and how can you argue with a rifle that you just shoot well? And moving on to practical rifles, we have an Ishapur 2A1 from 8mm Mauser Man, a Winchester Model 1917 from Great Northwest Weaponry, and an SKS from the Blind Sniper. The Ishapur 2A1 is an Indian-produced example of an Enfield in 7.62 NATO. This example I have here was actually the very first firearm I ever purchased, and I know it's a favorite of 8mm Mauser Man, making several appearances on his channel. I think it's a solid bolt action option, taking the reliability and speed of the Enfield design and updating it with a more modern cartridge. The Winchester Model 1917 is a rifle that I really do want, and I have been thinking about stalking Gunbroker to hunt down a good deal on one to add to my collection. I like the overall looks and aesthetics of the rifle, the bolt design, front sight protectors, everything just comes together to a nice looking rifle. And the action has been smooth whenever I've had a chance to pick one up at a gun show or in a gun store to try out. They were actually issued to U.S. troops in greater numbers than the 1903 in the Great War, and is definitely a very nice choice. And who can forget the SKS, a semi-auto in 7.62 by 39. This was almost my choice for favorite practical rifle that I own. The only reason I did not pick the SKS is that the stripper clips can be somewhat finicky for reloading. I have reloaded via stripper clips in one of my SKSs for hundreds of rounds, and whenever I feel like I've got the motion down for a smooth reload, the very next time I try, I mess it up in some way, even trying with the same stripper clip. But these are definitely fun and practical, and with the intermediate round, are easy and quick to get back on target for follow-up shots. For favorite rifle that they do not own, we have a Johnson Model 1941 from Great Northwest Weaponry, a full-length 1891 Carcano rifle from the Blind Sniper, and a Hakim from 8mm Mauser Man. The Johnson Model 1941 is definitely an interesting design and rifle. As Great Northwest Weaponry mentioned, the side magazine gate where you can feed in stripper clips is kind of a bizarre system with an internal rotary magazine. I've seen them at a few gun shows here and there, and with that potbelly look to it, they're definitely a head turner and will grab the attention of anyone who's not familiar with them. The barrels recoil slightly when fired, which means they have a pretty bare bones bayonet that go along with them in order to not weigh down the barrel too much and throw off the action. I have a full-length 1891 Carcano here made in 1917, and it is a fine rifle. This example is actually the best deal I've ever had on a firearm purchase, which I may go into detail on in another video someday. The ammo for the 6.5 Carcano is currently 3 or 4 times higher than it was a few years ago due to all the other Carcano models that have been coming into the country, and the in-block clips can get a little worn with continuous use, but it is a pretty soft shooting rifle for a military bolt action with that 6.5 cartridge out of a full-length barrel. And with all the recent Carcano imports, it is one of the harder variations to find. And the Hakim. It's kind of funny. Out of the 4 of us, 8mm Mauser Man is the only one who does not have one, or at least I'm pretty sure, because I think I've seen videos from the Blind Sniper and Great Northwest Weaponry on their own Hakims. And I did a video on my channel about the Hakim, comparing Hakim thumb to Grand thumb. So I think 8mm Mauser Man needs to join the Hakim Club and pick one up himself. But they're definitely fun and interesting firearms with an odd action. They are fun to shoot and based on the Swedish young men like 8mm Mauser Man mentioned. For practical rifle they don't own, we have a Spanish FR8 from the Blind Sniper, an M1 Carbine from 8mm Mauser Man, and the SVT-40 from Great Northwest Weaponry. The FR8 is actually probably one of the firearms I know the least about that was picked. A very modern bolt action made at a point in time when most people were not bothering to design new bolt action systems. My understanding is that it is a very solid platform, and the reasoning that can properly handle .308 Winchester makes good sense to me as to why you would choose it as a practical rifle. The M1 Carbine is definitely a practical rifle as well, very soft shooting, and really something I probably would have picked as a favorite practical rifle I don't own if I had limited myself to things I could theoretically actually own at some point. This is definitely something I want to add to my collection, and if I come across a good deal, I will definitely jump on it. I know there is a lot of minutia with these as far as variations throughout production for the military, but I would definitely want to get a Second World War example just to kind of go along with most of my other collection. And the SVT-40 making another appearance. Well, what else can I say that I didn't in my first video when I picked it as my favorite rifle? It's a great rifle, fun to shoot, easy to get ammo, great all around with a lot of history and a very interesting look. That's all for rifle picks, so on to favorite pistols. From 8mm Mauser Man, we have the CZ82, from Great Northwest Weaponry, the P08 Luger, and from the Blind Sniper, we have a P38/P1. I agree with 8mm Mauser Man that the CZ82 is a great firearm with a lot of things to like. It has good ambidextrous features in a compact package with the 9mm Makarov cartridge. I think they are probably the best 9mm pistol to come out of the Eastern Bloc with all the innovations in the design, and it is definitely a practical pistol, which we will get back to in a minute. The P08 Luger is a classic, one with a great design. I do not own one, but I have fired one, and it is an odd feeling kind of pulling up on the toggle to chamber around, but it is very unique, very fun, and you can't fault anyone for choosing it as a favorite pistol. It's iconic and something I would definitely want to own at some point. The P38 or P1 is also an iconic pistol. I just recently picked mine up last month and only got to shoot it this past weekend for the first time. Again, it's a classic design, one that people instantly recognize and are interested in if you're taking it out to shoot. And with the grip, it just makes you want to shoot it in a classic one-handed stance. For practical pistols, we have a Smith & Wesson Model 1917 from Great Northwest Weaponry, a Star BM9 from the Blind Sniper, and the CZ82 making a second appearance from 8mm Mauser Man. The Smith & Wesson Model 1917 was the most surprising pick out of anyone for these lists, at least in my opinion. A revolver for practical pistols sounds pretty odd at first thought, but Great Northwest Weaponry did make some good points about moon clips for reloading and the reliability of a revolver. After all, these are personal preferences. It's up to anyone what they choose, but I was still definitely surprised when he pulled that out of his pretty vast collection that I've seen on his channel for his pick. The Star BM9 is a nice little pistol. I feel like I'm just accurate with this thing without a lot of effort. I guess it just points naturally and fits well in my hand. It is definitely a very nice pistol, a scaled down 1911 style, and it's a blast to shoot. Plus, if you hopped on these things when they were coming out as surplus a few years ago, you got quite the deal. And of course, the CZ82, again, as I mentioned before, with all the features, is definitely a practical pistol that can still hang with other modern pistols as a concealed carry option. For favorite firearms they don't own, we have a broom handle Mauser N9 from the Blind Sniper, a VZ61 Scorpion in 9mm Makarov from 8mm Mauser, and a Finnish Lottie from Great Northwest Weaponry. Well, what can I say about the C96 broom handle? This was also my pick for this category for all the reasons I mentioned before and the Blind Sniper mentioned. Is a great pistol with a lot of history and interesting variations. It's definitely something that you kind of want to pick up if you run across, and the red 9 grips just make it a very interesting piece. And who doesn't love the Scorpion? I know 8mm Mauser Man wanted this in a 9mm Makarov chambering, and a Scorpion chambered in that would be a pretty fun day at the range. They always make me think of movies and video games first, but I would like the chance to shoot one at some point. And the Lottie L35 is an interesting design, like someone took a Luger out back and then just started tinkering with it until they came back with something new. It has a unique feel and look to it and would definitely be a nice piece for any collection. And to finish out the categories, favorite practical pistol that they don't own. With a high standard HDM for 8mm Mauser Man, a Browning high power for Great Northwest Weaponry, and a Glock, or if that doesn't count, Browning high power for the Blind Sniper. The high standard HDM with the integral suppressor and a history of use by the OSS, other special forces, and issuance to U-2 pilots definitely has one of the more varied histories of any of the picks on the list. Very practical for certain purposes, which makes me wonder what 8mm Mauser Man gets up to. Definitely a very cool choice. And yes, Glocks are very practical, so I will ignore that first choice from the Blind Sniper and use the opportunity to talk up the Browning high power some more, since Great Northwest Weaponry also picked this. A great pistol, still my carry gun, though I have been thinking about changing it up to something with a little more support from modern holster companies, is a practical full-size pistol which has withstood the test of time, with new clones coming out today, and FN America kind of releasing their own updated design, which I'm still not so sure about. But those are the lists. There were some interesting picks by everyone, and be sure to check out their channels if you have not done so already. I feel like this kind of turned into a weird flex for me where I just started talking about things I owned, but that did help me organize my thoughts having hands-on experience with a lot of these firearms. Great picks all around, and I'm sure there will be another cross-channel video again sometime in the future. If one of these other channels sent you here, be sure to stick around and subscribe. Check out some of the other videos. Please like this video and comment below what you think of all of our picks. Who do you think had the best practical picks? What would you pick out of your own collection? Let me know below. Any interaction is a weapon as it helps support and grow the channel. Thanks for watching. The Ishapur 2A1 is an Indian-produced example. Whoopsie.